social media. It's here to stay, and it seems it's virtually all around us. Social media uses web and mobile-based technology to mediate human connection. My name is Jodi Detrick, and welcome to When Virtual Becomes Real, how former strangers in a Facebook group for ministers developed retreat-ready relationships. This video case study will look at the Under 40 Assemblies of God Ministers Facebook group and the rather remarkable development that happened within this closed or by invitation only social media group. In his book, Viral, How Social Networking is Poised to Ignite Revival, which I read on the Kindle app of my iPad, by the way, Leonard Sweet gives the familiar acrostic TGIF a whole new meaning. In his book, TGIF stands for Twitter, Google, iPhones, and Facebook. And we definitely live in a TGIF world. And while some, including a number in the church, view social media as a threat to developing true relational connections, Sweet sees it as a means for even greater connectivity, which can actually enhance relationships and even our ability to spread the gospel. But back to that Under 40 AG Ministers group. Okay, so it's nothing new when people connect through social media hosts like Facebook, which boasts, about 955 million active users, give or take a few, worldwide. But what is unique, though, is when people from all over the nation, most of whom had never met in person before, developed such a strong relational tie that they chose to set aside a weekend out of their very busy lives. These folks are in ministry. They really don't have a lot of spare time, and found childcare or brought the kids along and somehow came up with the cash. Did I mention these folks are in ministry? They don't have a lot of spare cash either. And they traveled all the way to Colorado Springs to spend a couple of days with people who, with a few exceptions, they had never met in person before. I had the privilege of serving as a decidedly over 40 coach for this retreat, and I was moved and encouraged by the relational connections I saw there and the depth of those connections, and especially those that had started as virtual and yet had somehow moved to real. So I wondered what factors contributed to this virtual to real relational progression, and what might we as a church learn from this case study about the role of social media in the church and in offering supportive friendships to those who often desperately need it so much. Those in the pew, yes, for sure, but also those in ministry. Now, in keeping with the theme of our subject, it seems fitting to connect with two people who played a big role in this Under 40 AG group by means of a computer. First, let's meet Zach Wilkinson. Zach and his wife Lisa live in Longmont, Colorado, and Zach is a 30-something pastor of a church called Reveille, which means to dream. This Under 40 AG Facebook group was really born out of Zach's dream when he was doing some graduate studies at Denver Seminary. But I'll let him tell you a little bit more about that. And he'll answer some questions I had about this whole virtual to real, Facebook to face-to-face relationship progression. And we'll also meet Lila Ojala. She and her husband Eric are a dynamic team of church planters from Summit County, Colorado. And like Zach, she has some great perspectives on this Facebook relationship connection and how it grew from virtual to real. Let's see what they have to say.
All right, I think we're live. Hey Jodi, great to talk with you. Thanks for asking me about this stuff. And I'll go ahead and read the question and then try and do my best to give you an answer. So tell me a little about the history of the Facebook group and your involvement in it. Well, it's interesting you should ask. I've been involved with the group since it started because I was the one who started it. I got the idea while at a seminarians conference in Springfield, and while I was there, we were talking with the executives from the assemblies, Dr. Wood the rest of the guys, and they were just telling us how they were really trying to connect with under 40 pastors. And we as under 40s know best how to connect with ourselves. And so this was just a way that I had thought would be a good way to connect with some under 40 pastors. So myself and a few of the other people in the group put together a Facebook group and invited our friends. And that day we had about, just between us and our acquaintances and friends, added about 100 people to the group and made it open for other people to be able to add other people. After having about 100 people in the group, I was pretty excited. Like, we had done it, we'd arrived, we'd connected with under 40 people, and then the next day it got to like 200 and then 300, and within a week it was to 1,000. And I think we've kind of hit our critical mass. We're a little over 2,300 AG pastors in the group. But it started just with a couple of us inviting our friends and using Facebook's backbone to build a social network for under 40 pastors. And it kind of caught like wildfire. I think that's what made the group grow, is just the fact that people really wanted relationship. They really wanted to connect. They felt disconnected for a lot of different reasons, not just because they were under 40. Maybe they felt disconnected because they were in an isolated area, or because they're a missionary, or because they're a church planter, or because they're a woman, or because of this or that, or tons of other things. They felt disconnected or marginalized or whatever, and this was a way to connect them.
I'm Lila Ojala, and a church planter in Colorado, Summit County, Colorado, and I'm going to answer some questions for you regarding the Under 40 page. I helped Zach Wilkinson plan the Colorado retreat that we had in May, and so hopefully these answers will be helpful to you, and hopefully I'll do it right. So enjoy. I joined the Under 40 Facebook page a couple of months after it was formed, I guess, the fall of 2011. A friend sent us an invitation, and right away there were over 1,000 people on it at the time, and right away I got involved in discussions, some serious discussions about the things that I'm passionate about, but then just sometimes it was just silly, and people were just goofing off, and it just felt great to go and sit down in front of my computer and laugh. So that's how I got involved. And then about a month maybe after I started posting on the page, Zach Wilkinson contacted me and asked if I would be a moderator. I didn't even know that such a thing existed, but apparently there was a small group of guys who sort of kept everything flowing on the page, invited people in and approved people, and made sure that the people who came onto the page fit the qualifications of what the page was about, as like being under 40 and being a minister. And there were 7 guys already on it, and I gladly joined, so I was the 8th member of the moderator team. And that's been wonderful as well, because not only have I been able to go onto the page and form relationships with the 2,000 plus people who are on there, but the group of us who are the moderators, now there are 10 of us, have formed a pretty tight group. We bring prayer requests to each other all the time. We vent to each other. We say things to each other that we could not put on the page. And so it's actually kind of a deeper layer, I would say, of the Under 40 page. We've only ever met once, and actually a few of the moderators have never met in person. But we have this pretty intense sort of bond. It's just been a really good experience for me so far being involved in the Under 40 page, and it's opened up some really great doors with relationships with other people as well.
I think they've moved from virtual to real because that's just the natural progression. I think relationships can be cultivated in cyberspace, and they can be initiated in cyberspace, but they can't exist completely and solely there. I think there's something about the physical connection that people need and look for.
And when you have that kind of conversation with people over and over and over again, you want to meet them. You want to hug them. You want to shake hands and introduce them to your kids, and vice versa. You want to sit and have coffee and laugh and talk about other things too, and hear more about their background. And just that personal interaction that you cannot get typing on a computer, I think many of us wanted to have.
I mean, within a couple of weeks of the group starting, we were already having under 40 meetups throughout the country. And they've been real low-key, casual. Everybody goes Dutch. One of the things I've said from the beginning is I really hope it causes us to get together. I'd love to see us do a retreat or some retreats. And I was really excited that that was actually able to come to fruition.
I think the reason that so many of us have decided to meet in person is because there is so much that we share on the page that is so personal to us. We share a lot on there. So very often a conversation will start very intellectually about someone who had a moral failure and how do we help other ministers not do this. And everybody will respond back and forth about their suggestions, and they're very theoretical. And then I'll never forget, about a month ago, someone popped up on the page and said, well, let's not talk about someone who's going through this right now. Let's talk about me. I had a moral failure a decade ago, and here's what would have helped. Here's how I was restored. Here's how my ministry's been since then. Here's the accountability I've put in. And so to be able to take it so often from that theoretical level of here's what I would do in ministry to here's my life and something very personal to me. And so again, once you have that level of comfort and vulnerability, you just want to meet them. You want to hang out with people.
I just think it enhanced it. It was my favorite thing going up to a retreat and seeing people going, I'm sorry, how do you pronounce your name? Like, because you'd only read it. Lila was probably my favorite because everyone assumed it was pronounced Layla or Leela or anything else other than Lila, but that was kind of fun. And it happened with everyone. Everyone's name was different. You know, people who maybe used their full name, like Samuel on Facebook, you know, getting to know that he just goes by Sam, you know, stuff like that. So that was pretty fun. And people got to really engage the relationships in a greater way. You know, so it wasn't just, you know, talking. And some people who seemed really extroverted online were really introverts in person, and the other way around.
I think it has given us a lot more grace with each other. It's given us some sort of personal connection. There's a benefit of the doubt that you give people that you know and love that we're not always so quick to give people who just disagree with us intellectually or have some minor variance on our theology. When we have spent time with somebody and we really just like them as a person, we give a lot more. And I've noticed that on the page with the people who have attended the retreat or have connected in other ways in person since then and before the retreat. With people on the page, we are way more graceful toward each other. We tend to sit back and think, you know, originally I would think by making that comment she would think this, but having known her a little bit, I don't really think that's what she meant by it. I'm going to give her the benefit of the doubt and assume that she didn't mean something heretical, you know, or destructive or whatever. So I think it's definitely helped us treat each other better on the page once we've seen each other in person.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, if you couldn't make it to the retreat, you missed out, and that's why we're doing more retreats, because that's a great way to connect in a greater way with people. So, I mean, there's still the connection, and even the fact that the retreat happened and people weren't there, it still elevated the relationship, because even though they weren't at the retreat, they know the retreat was going on, and so you know, there became an even more personal connection, I think, for those who weren't at the retreat. Then again, I was at the retreat, so.
There are people who have connected since then because we did connect in person. All sorts of cool webs of relationship that are happening since that retreat. All sorts of things that I've heard about with people getting together in little clusters here and there, whether it's online or actually in person. For example, I was able to connect with 5 other women at the retreat who are lead pastors or in leadership in some major way in their context. And there are certain things that as we started chatting, we all have in common, no matter what our ministry context is, our age, all of that. Some of us have families, some of us are, one woman is single. There's all sorts of different things about us, but because of the commonalities that we found and the ways that we could encourage each other, we decided to stay in touch. And so every other week we get on Google Plus for an hour or two and talk about what's happening in our lives and try to encourage one another. I am starting to feel like these women who are across the country, all over the country, literally from coast to coast, these half dozen of us, are very good friends that I could go to for anything. So I met all of those women in person at the retreat. Every single one of them is someone that I met at the retreat. And so in that way, I feel like, yeah, we have an advantage in that way. We saw each other, we hugged each other, we played with each other's kids. And so now we can get down to business on things that we actually want to see happen and change with some sort of level of trust having been built.
I feel like being connected with other pastors always elevates our ministry. And so the fact that I've been able to get relationships and make friends with people who are around the country doing the same thing I'm doing or different things that I'm doing and get advice. And I mean, there's been so many times that I've been able to call one of the other people in the group or talk to them online or throw a question out there about my ministry. And just having the collective knowledge of, several thousand other pastors just makes it so that I have this great resource, and all of us look to be a resource for each other. I mean, sharing resources is part of the vision behind the group. Maybe I've got an idea that I want to do, and so I throw it out there, and then after listening to everyone talk about it, I'm like, I don't know if I want to do that. So anyway, it's been really good. I feel like my ministry has benefited and grown because of my involvement in this under 40 group.
I'll be honest with you, there are days that I really don't want to look at the page because arguments can get petty. And no matter how much we want to give to each other and have grace with each other, there are some days that things just get personal on some of the threads, or maybe nobody has even said anything that's cutting or hurtful, but because a particular issue is personal to me, when it's described and explained in an intellectual way with no regard to how people might feel about it, it's personal to me. But then most days when I'm on the page, I'm so encouraged. I feel as though I'm able to bounce ideas off of people. I get lots of ideas back about anything. At any given day, you will see one person positing some very deep theological question, another talking about the Greek in some passage, another discussing a pop culture book that people in their congregation are reading that they're not sure is good for their spirits, another talking about ideas for youth ministry and how to assimilate people who are newcomers, another about how to keep your marriage strong in the face of ministry and everything that we have going, another about ideas for getting into adoption overseas. I mean, the variety of threads that people come up with. And then, there are some about comic book characters and football teams. I mean, it's not all very deep debate. And so a lot of times in the days when it gets to be a little bit too much, I just go to those threads and talk about what my favorite food is, or the funniest thing my kid did in the last week. And it really has brightened up my day on a personal level, which I think affects all of our ministries a lot. This page has been wonderful. It's been life-giving. It's provided opportunities for me to meet people and to have ideas and to receive resources. There's not a single day that I don't learn something about some book that I could be looking into, or some person that I could be talking to give me ideas about different things. But most of the amazing, encouraging, transforming power of the page has just been having people say, I believe in you. You're not alone. Even if I'm across the world, I know what you're saying. And that means the world.
In my own, some background here. I did my master's project when I was at Denver Seminary. My project was on creating relationships through virtual media, or through social media. And so I've been really studying this whole thing for several years and feeling like it could happen, that social media would be the thing that would help people who are disconnected and isolated and busy stay connected in accountable relationships. So I have been theorizing this, and the fact that it actually happened was so cool to me. And so I've continued to use this in my own church setting. We started a men's group just a couple of months ago, and one of the aspects of our men's group was we created a Facebook group just for the men of the church to be able to talk, share, have prayer requests. We made it a private group so that they could know that they could get on there, they could share and talk, and it would be just for them. And so I've used it in my own ministry.
I think one of the things that I've learned most being on the Under 40 page is just that there's so many of us, and we all care passionately about different things. We all are beating different drums. On any given conversation, you'll have people coming at it from both angles. And it looks like we're disagreeing sometimes, but really what we're doing is just emphasizing a different part of it. And that's the way the Christian life is the tension between loving people who don't know Christ yet, but hating for them to be in sin, or free will and predestination, or whatever. And so very often on the page it can seem like we're disagreeing, but really they're just minor issues. We're just looking at it from a different perspective, and that's what the body is about.
Yeah, I think I'll say, that there's really 4 components behind this under 40 movement, and not just Facebook. I mean, we really all recognize that we have to move beyond Facebook. Facebook won't be around in a few years probably, or at least not in the same iteration that it is. Facebook is just the tool for the moment. But the point of this is relationships. And so we have a vision for 4 things, really. We want to be about making friends, networking leaders, sharing resources, and giving voice. I think these 4 things are the heart's cry of the under 40, the younger ministers in our fellowship. And if we can meet the needs of those 4 things, I think we can really do a lot to stay connected.
So being able to see in a new way, in a very big way, because there's so many people who are on the page, seeing the diversity of giftings in the body, in the assemblies of God, in under 40 ministers. It has been beautiful.
So there you have it. How did relationships in that under 40 AG Ministers Facebook group go from virtual to real, from Facebook to face-to-face? Well, there are many conclusions that I can draw from these interviews, and also from the anonymous survey I did with this under 40 Facebook group. But here are 4 that really stand out to me. Number 1, the need was there. This wasn't manufactured by someone who just wanted to start some cool new group. A significant number in this demographic expressed a real hunger for authentic relational connections, and Facebook just gave them the means to get the ball rolling. Number 2, there was a vision for deeper relationships, and the leadership of the group, and especially Zach, I had a vision early on that this under 40 Facebook group would go from kind of a casual virtual relationships to real in-depth friendships, and that included the goal to meet in person. Zach's vision was the catalyst to make that happen. And I think in the fascinating landscape of relational connections that someone always has to be the one to initiate that going deeper part of things. The first person to say, hey, let's take this a little deeper here. And others may be thinking that or feeling that, but unless someone really puts true effort in that direction, things will usually just kind of stay on a surface level. Number 3 is that they had a 4-part purpose for the group, and that created a framework for relational connections. Zach and Lila talked about making friends, networking leaders, sharing resources, and giving voice. They were very intentional about articulating those purposes for the group's formation. And so these 4 components have guided not only the development but the progression of the group. And it's obvious from the successful relationships that have developed that those deliverables have been achieved. It seems likely that a group without a set of such clearly defined purposes would have floundered after the early exciting days of the group being formed had worn off. Because, relationships flounder with ambiguity, but they flourish with purpose and specificity. Certain guardrails have been put in place that have kept the relational elements of that Facebook group on track. And while this was more subtle and perhaps understated in the interviews with Zach and Lila, this group have put parameters in place that have made it a safe and healthy environment for relationships to flourish. And here are a couple of those guardrails. First, it's a closed group, and that means it's by invitation only, and you have to meet the criteria of being under 40 and being an AG minister. And while we often shy away from any semblance of exclusivity, and we may not even like the phrase closed group, those there are those occasions when a complete openness to one and all is actually a detriment to relationships going deeper. So in the accompanying online survey I did with this group, I thought it was interesting that almost 31% attributed the success of the enhanced relationships to the fact that it's a closed group. Also, the group has put moderators in place who kind of help ensure the civility and the healthy boundaries while allowing for very lively discussions and widely varying viewpoints. And you know, I was impressed with the weightiness that is given to this role. And that doesn't mean that the moderators are being heavy-handed gatekeepers, but the sense that they are real leaders in this group and they don't take their role lightly. In fact, they're a subgroup that actually even meets apart from the larger group and really care about the health of the relational element of the group. And I believe that they are a significant part of the success of this group. I think that the rest of us in the larger body of Christ can apply these same 4 lessons as we move forward with the use of social media in our TGIF worlds. And first of all, discover what the genuine needs are that could potentially be met through social media in your church or community. And for some great ideas, check out the resources at the end of this documentary. They contain valuable information, much more than I have time to go into here, but they're offered by people who are actually using social media effectively in their ministry settings. Develop a vision to take the relationships that form through social media from virtual to real, and realize that real may look different in different ministry settings. And it may not always even mean connecting in person, although that's probably an important element. Real, though, involves creating a supportive environment where people can be authentic and vulnerable with each other, and where they feel cared about, where they can grow spiritually, intellectually, and emotionally. And then find a champion, that one person who's willing to say, hey, let's take this a little deeper. That person will be the catalyst in moving the relationships from virtual to real. Number 3, have a definite purpose or purposes for the group. Clearly articulate what those are to the virtual community, and so ask, why does this group exist? Is it to offer support to people who have lost their jobs in this economy? Is it to connect parents, maybe who are struggling through the teen years with their offspring? Or is it to promote spiritual intimacy with Jesus through maybe some kind of guided development of the spiritual disciplines? Maybe it's just to ask and answer hard questions about faith in a safe, non-judgmental environment. The group, but more importantly, the people in the group, will experience more value in one another when together they are achieving the reason for their group being in existence. And remember, relationships flounder with ambiguity, but they flourish with purpose and specificity. Now that's kind of a tongue twister, but it's really true. Number 4, don't shy away from the guardrails that will keep the virtual group on track. Sometimes an invitation-only group with moderators is the best way to ensure a virtual environment where people can be transparent with one another and know that those in the group get them and really understand where they're coming from. And in the realm of social media exchanges, in a Facebook group, moderators can prevent a world of hurt and unhealthy conflict that's started by a mean-spirited or maybe even thoughtless comment. So before I go back to checking my own Facebook page, I want to say a big thank you to the Under 40 AG Facebook Ministers group for allowing this over 40 AG minister a peek into your world. I love what I see happening there and the relationships that continually are moving from virtual to real. Under 40 AG ministers rock. And special thanks to Zach Wilkinson and Lila Ojala for their insightful and thoughtful, articulate answers to those questions. I really appreciate that, you guys. And to those of you watching this, be sure to check out those resources that I mentioned that will give you some more ideas about how to use social media effectively in your ministry setting. And don't forget to check out the outtakes too, they're pretty funny. And as you navigate our TGIF world, may your life be a catalyst for taking relationships from virtual to real. Now that might make a good Facebook post.
Fix my hair here for a second.
Thanks, Jodi, for talking with me. I think you're the best. I hope this project goes well. And if there's anything else you need from me, please let me know. And I'll really try not to take so long in getting back to you. I just have been, I don't know why this video thing is giving me trouble. Trying to find a good room for it, you know. Like, I don't know if you can hear a little piano playing. I'm at my house. This guy's tuning the piano. And, you know, I almost like, I shouldn't do it today. But I'm like, man, Jodi's waiting for this thing. So if you hear a little piano, tink, tink, that's what that is. Hopefully it wasn't too distracting. So, alright, let me know if there's anything else.